Confiding then in the great virtue of obedience, I resolved in the name of the Lord and of my queen and mistress to lay aside my reluctance. I call this virtue great, not only because by it the most noble activities of the faculties of a creature, namely the mind, the judgment, and free will, are offered as a holocaust to the Lord, but also because no other virtue ever assures success more unfailingly than obedience. For by it the creature then does not operate of itself alone, but also as an instrument of him that governs and commands. This was the assurance of Abraham when he overcame the force of the natural love for his son Isaac. And if it was sufficient for such an act, and sufficient to detain the sun and the heavens in their swift course, it can certainly be sufficient to influence the movement of the earth. Perchance if the hand of Uzzah had been guided by obedience, he would perhaps not have been punished as presumptuous in touching the ark. Well do I know that I am more unworthy than Uzzah in stretching out my hand to touch, not the lifeless and figurative ark of the Old Covenant, but the living ark of the New Testament, which contained the manna of the divinity, the source of grace, and the new law. But if I remain silent, I fear with good reason to disobey Most High commands, and I could exclaim with Isaiah, "Woe is me because I kept my peace." Therefore, O my Queen and Lady, it is better that thy benignest goodness and mercy, and the blessings of thy liberal hand should shine forth through my base and unworthy efforts. It is better that I should experience thy blessings in obeying thy commands, than that I should fall into thy displeasure. It will be a work of thy clemency, O purest Mother, to raise the poor from the earth, and to execute through a weak and unfit instrument a work so difficult. For thereby thou shalt magnify thy condescension and the graces which thy most holy Son communicates to thee. Moreover, thou thereby shalt exclude that deceitful presumption which might make us imagine that by human efforts, or by earthly prudence, or by the force and authority of deep discussion this work is accomplished. Thou thereby showest that by divine virtue thou awakenest anew the hearts of the faithful, drawing them toward thee, thou fountain of kindness and mercy. Speak therefore, O Lady, that thy servant may hear with an ardent desire fully to obey thee. But how can my desires ever reach or equal my indebtedness? A befitting response on my part will be impossible, but if it were possible, I would desire to give it. O powerful and exalted Queen, fulfill thy promises by manifesting to me thy graces and attributes, in order that thy greatness may be made known and heralded through the nations and generations. Speak, O Lady, for thy servant heareth. Speak and magnify the Most High in the powerful and wonderful works which his right hand performed for thee in thy most profound humility. Let them flow from the hollow of his hands filled with hyacinths into thine, and from thine to thy devout servants, in order that the angels may bless him, the just magnify him, and the sinners seek him. Let all of them see the example of thy highest sanctity and purity, and by the grace of thy most holy Son, let me be favored with this mere and efficacious rule, by which I can set my life in order. For this is to be the principal purpose and first object of my solicitude in writing thy life. This thou hast repeatedly intimated to me, condescending to offer me a living pattern and a mirror without flaw, in which I should see and according to which I should adorn my soul, so as to become worthy to be thy daughter and the bride of thy most holy Son. This shall be my whole object and intention. Therefore I shall not write as a teacher, but as a disciple, not as one instructing, but as one trying to learn, knowing that it is the duty of women to be silent in the Holy Church and to listen to the teachers. But as an instrument of the Queen of Heaven, I will declare what she deigns to teach me and whatever she commands me, for all the souls are capable of receiving the Spirit which her divine Son has promised to pour out over men of all conditions. The souls are also able to communicate it in a befitting manner, whenever a higher authority acting according to the dispensation of Christ's Church so disposes. I am now convinced that the Church has authorized this history through my superiors. That I should err is possible, and to an ignorant woman natural, but then I err while obeying and not acting of my own free will. Thus I remit myself and subject myself to those who are my guides, and to the correction of the Holy Catholic Church, to whose ministers I fly in all my difficulties. And I wish that my superior teacher and confessor be a witness and a censor of this doctrine which I receive, and also a severe and vigilant judge of the manner in which I put it into practice or fail in the fulfilling of the obligations consequent upon this blessing. Pursuant to the will of the Lord and the command of obedience, I have written for the second time this heavenly history. For during the first writing of it, though the light by which I perceived the mysteries was abundant and fruitful in proportion as my shortcomings were great, my tongue was unequal to the task of finding the proper terms, and my pen not swift enough for a full statement. I omitted some things, and with the lapse of time, and by the aid of new enlightenments, I found myself better prepared to write at this second time. Nevertheless, there always remains much of what I understood and have seen, which I must leave unsaid, since to say all will never be possible. Besides these reasons, there was another known to me in the Lord, namely, that in my first writing my mind was much hindered from attending to the matter and arrangement of this work by my temptations and great fears. They raised such tempests of contrary thoughts and suggestions within me that, deeming it the greatest presumption to have attempted such an arduous task, I concluded to burn it all. And I believe that this did not happen without the permission of the Lord, for in the turbulency of my soul I could not present myself in a state entirely befitting and desirable to the Lord for writing and engraving into my heart and spirit his doctrine, as he commands me to do now, and as can be seen from the following event. On one of the festival days of the purification of Our Lady, after having received the most holy sacrament, I wished to celebrate this holy festival, which was the anniversary of my profession, with many acts of thanksgiving and of total resignation to the Most High, who, without any merits of mine, had chosen me as his spouse. While I was thus exciting these affections, I felt in my interior a most powerful change, accompanied by abundant light, which raised me and urged me strongly and sweetly toward the knowledge of the essence of God, his goodness, perfections, and attributes, and to the disclosing of my own misery. And these different things, which were placed before my understanding at one and the same time, produced in me various effects. The first was that all the attention of my mind and all my aspirations were raised on high. The other effect was that I was humbled in mind to the very dust, in such a way that it seemed to take away my own existence. At the same time, I felt a most vehement sorrow and contrition for my grievous sins, joined to the determination to amend and to renounce all worldly things, aspiring instead toward complete love of God. In these affects I remained as if annihilated, and the greatest pain seemed but consolation in death but life. The Lord, having pity on my faintness, in sheer mercy spoke to me. Be not dismayed, my daughter and spouse, for in order to pardon, to wash, and to purify thee from thy sins, I will apply my infinite merits and the blood which I shed for thee. Animate thyself to desire all perfection in imitation of the life of the most holy Mary. Write it a second time in order that thou mayest supply what was wanting and impress her doctrines on thy heart. Do not again irritate my justice, nor show thyself thankless for my mercy by burning what thou shalt have written, lest my indignation deprive thee of the light which, without thy merits, thou hast received for the manifestation of these mysteries.